Salvete omnes. This is Abbey Latin Liber Primus, Review 4, chapters 13 through 16. This is syntax exercise H, parsing English to Latin. Sententia prima. Because of the lack of bread and water, the sailors were not staying in the town. Because of a thing. Because of a noun, the lack. A lack is a thing. Because of this thing, this noun, we're going to use the preposition ob or propter, which takes the accusative of whatever the thing is that's because of, that's causing this thing. If it were because of a noun, because of a verb, if it were because they lacked something, if the sentence said, because they lacked bread and water, then we would use a causal conjunction like quod to do a causal clause. Because they lacked bread and water, comma, then the main clause happened. This is just a prepositional phrase. Because of the lack of bread and water, the sailors blah, blah, blah. So we want the accusative of the noun inopia I feminine, which means lack, the accusative singular, ob or propter inopiam, and then it's the lack of bread and water, the lack towards bread and water. The lack is not possessing the bread, or the bread and the water are not possessing the lack, the want. We're not saying bread and water's lack. Because of bread and water's lack, where bread and water are owning or possessing the lack, we're saying the lack towards bread, the lack in reference to bread. If we turn this noun lack into a verb and said that they lacked bread and water, if this were a verb, then bread would be the accusative direct object of this verb. They lacked bread and they lacked water, another accusative direct object. But because this is a noun, because of the lack of bread and water, we don't use the accusative here, but the genitive, the objective genitive, not the possessive genitive, but the objective genitive, where the genitive is the object of the noun lack. Ponnus masculine, we want the genitive singular. And then we have this conjunction et, or we could say que and put que on the end of water, or we could use ac or atque. And water is aqua I feminine. It will also be an objective genitive because it is the lack of this thing and also of this thing. So panis aquaque, or panis et aquae, or panis ac, or panis atque, atque aquae. Use atque when the next word starts with a vowel. Now that takes care of that prepositional phrase. The sailors were not staying in the town. The sailors are the subject of our sentence, as they are the ones who are doing the main verb of not staying in the town. So our subject is in the nominative case, plural sailors. The Latin for sailor is nauta I masculine. So nautai. They were not. Not is known, the adverb known, which negates the verb to stay. Maneo, manere, mansi, mansus. Third person plural because they were not staying in the town. Imperfect, it happened continuously, they were not doing this. And active and indicative because they actively were not doing the staying. They were not be stayed. In the town, in plus the ablative shows location of oppidum e neuter. Singular ablative location, in plus oppido, in oppido. Altogether, propter panis aquaeque inopiam, on account of the lack of bread and of water. The nautai in oppido non manebant. The sailors were not staying in the town. Remember, you could also replace propter with ob. Optime, very well done. Sententia secunda. Everything on the ships was seen by everyone. There is no hiding. So everything, when you see everything, replace it mentally, or you can go ahead and cross out everything and write all things. So all things, it's omnis omne, third declension adjective, two terminations where omnis is the masculine feminine and omne is the neuter. We want the neuter because everything is all things. We want the plural neuter, and all third declension adjectives are I stem. So the verb is was seen. It's a passive voice verb, so ask yourself, what was seen? The ships? No, the everything, all things were seen by everyone. All the things on the ships were seen by everyone. So everything, all things is our subject in the nominative. Nominative plural neuter. Omnia. Omnia in plus the ablative of location, because that's where everything was located, on the navis feminine. So in plus the ablative plural in navibus, in navibus. Omnia in navibus, all the things on the ships. They were seen, the things were seen. So this is going to be perfect passive. They were seen, have been seen, perfect passive. That is the fourth principal part of the verb of video, videre, vidi, visus, to see. So visus it must agree with the all the things, omnia. So visa, nominative plural neuter, visa. And the helping verb, because it's perfect passive, must be of the present tense of sum. Sum ss, sumus estis, sunt. We want sunt because it's they, the things were seen. So visa sunt, or sunt visa. Omnia in nave sunt visa, visa sunt. By whom? By everyone. Everything was seen by everyone. If the verb were active, if was seen was an active voice verb, we would say everyone saw everything on the ships. So the everyone is the agent, the doer of the passive voice verb. By is the preposition ab, ab, and then omnis, omne again, only instead of being by all the things, whenever you see everyone, cross it out and replace it either in your head or on paper by all persons. Like everything becomes all things, everyone becomes all persons. So all the things on the ships were seen by all the persons. Ab plus the ablative of personal agent, omnibus. Ab omnibus. Omnia in navibus, ab omnibus visa sunt. Something like that. Optime. Tertia. Sententia tertia. The brave citizens stayed in camp with the soldiers for a long time. The verb is stayed. Who stayed? They stayed, the brave citizens, the citizens which are brave. Brave being an adjective to modify citizens. That means both must be nominative, the subject of the verb stayed. Well, brave is fortis forte, a third declension two termination adjective. And citizen is civis civis common, masculine or feminine. Latin is a sexist language, so you will most likely see the masculine form. So it doesn't really matter because the endings are the same. So cives, the nominative plural masculine cives, it could also be feminine because the endings are the same. And then brave, fortis forte, we want the masculine slash feminine. It's the same form, fortis. Just make it nominative plural, fortes. So cives fortes. They stayed, to stay, to wait, to remain. Maneo, manere, mansi, mansus. So they stayed, third person plural, they did it. Perfect tense, they did it. Active voice and indicative mood. So third principal part is mansi, chop off the I, mans, and then add erunt. Third plural perfect, manserunt. Cives fortes manserunt. They stayed. Where did they stay? In what location? in plus the ablative of location. Camp, the casra, orum, always neuter, always plural. Because it's always plural, it only has 5 forms. Nominative casra, then casrorum, then casris, then casra, then casris. So the ablative is casris. In casris. Cives fortes in castris manserunt. They also stayed with the soldiers. Cum plus the ablative with, ablative of accompaniment, miles, militis, masculine, soldier. The ablative plural being militibus, cum militibus. Cives fortes in castris cum militibus manserunt. And they did so for a long time. For a long time is a rather longish phrase for a short Latin adverb, diu, D-I-U, diu. So the cives fortes cum militibus in castris diu manserunt. Something like that. Optime, quarta, sententia quarta. The death of the general was announced to the wretched soldiers by the sad lieutenant. So sad. Bet his name was Mark Antony. So the death of the general was announced. The verb is was announced. What was announced? The general? No, it was the soldiers. No, it was the death. The death was announced to the wretched soldiers. Death is our subject. Mors, mortis, feminine. Third declension feminine, it is an I stem because the stem ends in RT. The genitive plural will be mortium. We don't want the genitive plural here. We want the nominative singular. It's only one death. It's the subject of the verb was announced. So mors. Of the general, it's the general's death. The general owns or possesses his own death. Imperator, imperatoris, masculine. We want the singular genitive of possession, imperatoris. Imperatoris mors, or mors imperatoris, was announced. So the death was announced, not the general, not the soldiers, not the lieutenant. The death was announced. So nuntio, nuntiare, nuntiavi, nuntiatus. We want the perfect passive because it was announced. It was done, snap of the fingers, done in the past. So the fourth principal part, nuntiatus aun, make it nominative singular feminine to agree with the nominative singular feminine mors, so nuntiata. And then the third person singular present tense helping verb of sum esse fui futurus est. Nuntiata est. Est nuntiata. Imperatoris mors nuntiata est to the wretched soldiers. So this thing was announced to, dative indirect object, to the soldiers who are wretched. Wretched being miser, misera, miserum, to agree with the dative plural miles, militis, masculine. So the dative plural masculine, militibus miseris. So the imperatoris mors, militibus miseris nuntiata est. And by whom was the passive voice verb, the announcing, done? By the sad lieutenant. Done by whom? The sad lieutenant. Preposition ab plus the ablative of personal agent. We had the adjective sad, tristis, triste, a third declension to termination adjective. It needs to agree with lieutenant, legatus e masculine. Ablative singular masculine, that makes sad ablative singular masculine. As a third declension adjective, tristis, remember the ablative is a letter I in the singular, so tristi. A legato tristi, the ablative singular masculine for both. The imperatoris mors, a legato tristi, militibus miseris nuntiata est. Quinta, sententia quinta. The soldiers had been warned by Caesar about the dangers of a harsh winter. Them winters, man, can pretty much dole out the harshness. So the soldiers had been warned. The verb is had been warned. It's a passive voice verb. The subject did not do the warning, but the subject had been warned. The warning, the action, happens to the subject in this passive voice verb. So soldiers is the subject. Miles militis masculine. We want the nominative plural masculine. Milites. Milites had been warned. Moneo, monere, monui, monitus, had been warned. So we want the pluperfect, had been, pluperfect passive. Fourth principal part, monitus, to agree with the subject, which is nominative plural masculine. So change monitus aum to moniti with letter I, moniti, nominative plural masculine. Milites moniti. And then we need a helping verb. The third plural, they, had been warned. So erant, erant. Milites erant moniti. Milites moniti erant. By whom had they been warned? Who did the passive voice verb? Who is the agent, the person who did it? That would be ya boy, Caesar. Aab, personal agent, takes the preposition aab, plus the ablative Caesar, Caesaris, masculine, Caesare, a Caesare. Milites erant moniti a Caesare. About what? About de, de, plus the ablative. Preposition de takes the ablative. Dangers, we want the ablative plural of periculum e neuter. So periculis, de periculis. The dangers of a harsh winter. Of a harsh winter. A harsh winter's dangers. Harsh is an adjective modifying winter. Acer, acris, acre. A third declension, three termination adjective, where acer is the masculine, acris is the feminine, acre is the neuter, and it agrees with winter, which is hiems, hiemis, feminine. That means we want the feminine form of the adjective acer, acris, acre, so acris, and it will decline like a third declension feminine, and feminine I stem. Hiems is a third declension feminine, not I stem. We want the genitive singular feminine for both. Hiemis acris. De hiemis acris periculis. De periculis hiemis acris. So altogether, the milites de hiemis acris periculis a Caesare erant moniti, or moniti erant. Optime, sexta, sententia sexta. Don't you see the fires on the tall mountain and in the forest, Quintus? Don't you? Do you not? Do you not see? Don't you see right now in the present tense? Do you not? With the implication the speaker has that Quintus is going to say, oh, yeah, I do. I do see the fires. Don't you see them? Oh, yeah, I totally do. Do you not see them? So we're asking this question where we expect a yes answer. Do you not? So nonne, our first word needs to be nonne. Non plus ne, nonne. You see. Who's doing the seeing? You do, second person singular, to, you, and we even name him as Quintus. So this one's going to be the vocative, Quintus. And we're going to move that vocative up near the front. So nonne, and then we'll put the verb, you see. Videre, videre, vidi, visus, to see. You see would be the present tense, do you see? Vides, just the present stem vide plus the s, second person singular vides. Nonne vides, comma, quinte, comma. Remember, if the noun is a second declension that ends in us, like Quintus or amicus or Marcus, the vocative changes from an us to the letter e. So quinte, amicae, marcae. Nonne vides quinte, commas around quinte. Then let's pick up with the fires. Ignis, ignis, masculine, plural. And it's the direct object of the verb to see, so the accusative case, ignes. Nonne vides quinte ignes? Where are the fires? They are on the tall mountain and also in the forest. So on is going to be in plus the ablative of location, in or on. Tall is an adjective modifying the noun mountain. Tall is altus and must have the same gender numbering case as mountain, mons, montis, masculine, a third declension I stem. In, ablative singular masculine, alto, monte. In alto, monte. In monte alto. And et que, ac atque. I'm going to use ac atque because I feel like it. And in the forest, in plus the ablative of location, forest, silva I feminine. In silva, make run over the final A. And if I'm going to use ac atque and I have in starts with a vowel, the letter I, so I'm going to use atque instead of ac. Atque in silva. Nonne vides quinte ignes in monte alto atque in silva? Oh yeah, video. I see them. Good job. Thank you. Gracias. Septima, sententia septima. The mountains in Spain are not high, but they are beautiful. So the mountains, mons, montes, masculine, third declension, masculine noun. We want the nominative plural subject because our verb is the linking verb are, present tense are. What are not high? The mountains are not. They are the montes. Where are they? Located in España, in Hispania, I feminine, in plus the ablative, Hispania, make run over the final A, in Hispania. Montes in Hispania are not high. So we're saying that the mountains, the subject, do not equal the predicate nominative, which is an adjective, altus must agree with the mountains in gender numbering case because it's an adjective. So altus must also be nominative plural masculine, alti. Alti non sunt montes in Hispania. Montes in Hispania non sunt alti. Remember, sunt is the third person plural present active indicative of sum esse fui futurus. And not is the adverb known, negating the verb. And known always goes before the verb. Non sunt. Montes in Hispania non sunt alti, or alti non sunt montes in Hispania. But they are beautiful. But, one T, sed, S-E-D, conjunction, they are beautiful. Said, you don't even need to repeat the they are, the sunt. You can just say, but beautiful. They are not high, but beautiful. Even in English, we could omit the they are. Beautiful. Poker, pulchra, pulchrum. Beautiful, noble, fine. Also is agreeing with the montes. The montes. Said, pulchri, pulchri, nominative plural masculine. Montes in Hispania non sunt alti, sed pulchri. Optime. Octava, sententia octava. Many ships used to sail to the enemy's territory. Did they really? The verb is used to sail. Who or what used to sail? The subject. Many ships. Ships which are many. Multasaum, to agree with navis, feminine. If it's feminine, so must the adjective many. If it's nominative, so must the adjective many. And if it's plural, so must be the adjective many. Nominative plural feminine, multi-naves. Multi-naves used to sail. Navigo, navigare, navigavi, navigatus. Third person plural because they used to do it. Imperfect tense. Active voice because they actively used to do it. And indicative mood. Navigabant. Multi-naves, navigabant. Navigabant, multi-naves. To or towards takes the accusative motion towards. We're going towards the enemy, right? No, we're going towards the territory belonging to the enemy, the territory of the enemy. So enemies, notice it's the enemy, not an enemy. It's definite article, the enemy. So it's going to be the plural of hostis, hostis, masculine. A third declension masculine I stem. So the genitive plural will be, it's one of them changey ones. Hostium, eum. Hostium instead of hostum. It's an I stem. Odd plus the accusative territory, hostium, the territory. Finis, masculine in the singular means borders. In the plural, it typically means territory. So finis, finium, masculine plural. It is also an I stem. But we want the accusative to go with the preposition to towards near. Ad fines hostium. Ad hostium fines. Navigabant multi-naves ad hostium fines. Multi-naves ad hostium fines navigabant. Nona, sententia nona. They had named the boy Marcus. The girl was called Julia. Of course. So they had named. They had named is the verb. Who had named? They had done so. Third person plural. Pluperfect active indicative of appello, appellare, appellavi, appellatus. To call someone by name or to name someone or something. So they had done so. Third principal part, appellavi, chop off the I, appellab, and add erant. They had done this. Appellaverant. They had named the boy. The boy is the direct object because he receives the action of the verb naming. The boy, puer, pueri, masculine boy, the direct object accusative. Appellaverant puerum. But what had they named the boy? I hope you remember that barn. I painted the barn. I painted the barn red. I took a thing, a direct object, and I made it something else. I took a barn, a direct object, and I made it a red barn, a predicate accusative. I made a thing, another thing. I made a direct object, a predicate accusative. They made, or in this case, they named the direct object, this predicate accusative. They named the puerum Marcum, Marcum, the predicate accusative, Marcus e masculine, Marcum. Puerum appellaverant Marcum. The girl was called Julia. So the verb now is was called. Who was called or what was called? The girl, the subject. Puella I feminine. The subject, she, was called. The girl, puella, was called. We can say appello again, only this time it's passive. Appello, appellare, appellavi, appellatus. So girl, appellata est, because it's third person singular perfect passive indicative. Appellata, remember it's a feminine, appellata est. Julia. Latin for Julia is Julia I feminine. Remember, no J, it's the letter I, Julia. Now the girl was called Julia. If this verb is active, and they had named the direct object the predicate accusative. This verb was called as passive. The subject is called a predicate nominative. A predicate nominative. Puella est appellata Julia. So altogether, puerum appellaverant Marcum, puella est appellata Julia. Optime, we have Marcus as a predicate accusative and Julia as a predicate nominative. Because this verb had named is active voice and takes a direct object and also a predicate accusative. This voice is passive. You can't take a direct object with a passive voice verb. It has a subject and then a predicate nominative. Optime and decima, sententia decima. The knight was wounded by the big soldier. The knight, the dude on horseback. A horse is an equus e masculine, and a person on a horse is an eques, equitus masculine, a third declension masculine, not I stem. So the singular subject, because he was wounded, the verb happened to him, he's the subject. So eques, this passive voice verb happened to him, he's the subject, eques. Was wounded, vulnera, vulnerare, vulneravi, vulneratus. The knight did not do the wounding because the verb is passive voice. The wounding happened to him. He was wounded. Perfect tense, passive voice. The fourth principal part is vulneratus. Make sure it's nominative singular masculine to agree with the nominative singular masculine knight. So vulneratus, there it is. The helping verb will be the third person singular present of sum, so est. Eques est vulneratus. Eques vulneratus est. Was wounded by whom or by what? By a person, by a big soldier. So personal agent, because it's a person who did the passive voice verb. The big soldier did the wounding to the knight. Big is magnosaon, big, large, great, in size or importance, agreeing with soldier, miles, militis, masculine. We want the ablative singular masculine, milite, the ablative singular masculine of magnosaon, magno, and then the preposition a in front of it, a milite magno. Eques a milite magno est vulneratus. Eques a milite magno vulneratus est. Vulneratus est eques a milite magno. A milite magno eques vulneratus est. All of those are fine. Optime, very well done. That concludes syntax exercise H and also review 4, chapters 13 through 16. You are now ready to move on to chapter 17. Valete omnes.